The scream of the chainsaw could be heard long before they entered the clearing. Masculine voices shouted above the din. Pero and Ina went up separately as they had the night before. Despite the events of the previous night, she wasn't ready to be closer.
Yeah, perhaps you take it to me.
It's a little hard, but I'm going to try this way. I don't like holding all these things. Despite the events of the previous night, she wasn't ready to be with him yet, to be seen together as a couple in the morning light. Plus, whatever had been discovered in the cave and the forest clearing had set the town on edge, had triggered an unusual flurry of activity, a panicky energy out of character with the slow unfolding of a warm market morning. It was the third Saturday in June, the temperature still fairly mild but getting warmer as the hours passed and the sun climbed higher up the dome of sky. Though only a few minutes past 10, Ina spotted many of her schoolmates walking or riding up the access road to the forest clearing informally known as the Antifa zone. Strangest of all at this early hour, on this bright Saturday morning, a day when generally only women moved about the town with their baskets and patterned shopping totes, were the black-clad Antifa boys roaring up the hill in a pack of scooters, some on their own and others with the slender rounded backs of girls slouched behind them, silken hair flapping about their bare shoulders and soft cheeks. Ina supposed they had dragged themselves out of bed because it was their clubhouse, their zone, so naturally they would have a proprietary feeling for whatever had been found up there. The forest clearing extended some 5 or 6 meters between the clubhouse and the opening of a deep hidden crevasse. A brawny local man in rough soiled clothes directed the work around the perimeter. Several men sawed away methodically at the bramble, at the young oak and alder branches that obscured the entrance to the cavity as they reached up toward the sunlight above the forest clearing. A couple of police cars stood waiting nearby, doors lolling open, and ominously, an ambulance as well. Clusters of observers milled about, talking and smoking and watching, women holding their baskets, men fumbling to unscrew tiny pewter flasks with calloused fingers. The Antifa boys slouched around in front of the clubhouse, off their scooters now, disencumbered of their girls, offering each other cigarettes, fiddling with Zippo lighters, feigning a lack of interest. Ina noticed several strangers in the gathering crowd. 3 young people, 2 men and a woman, stood by the container where the archaeological equipment, tarps, and tools were stored. The young woman, who wiped her cheeks repeatedly, seemed as if she were upset, crying even. Were it not for the fact that the 3 were wearing some sort of protective clothing, pale green coveralls and surgical masks pulled down from their mouths, they would have looked like tourists. All 3 appeared a bit shell-shocked and out of place, as if they had just stumbled off a night train at their destination, blinking at the unfamiliar local sunlight. Ina presumed they were members of the archaeological team that was supposed to start digging in the cave. 2 uniformed police officers squatted at the edge of the cavity, peering down, waiting for the saws to fall silent, for the debris to be cleared. Ina recognized standing behind them a tall plainclothes cop named Suban, a chief or detective, someone with authority. He was a tall, slightly bent and humorless man who the kids instinctively avoided, not just because he was a cop, but because in his gruff and melancholy manner, he seemed to see right through them, to measure their mettle, or usually lack of it, in an instant. And the town loner was also present, a lean, gray-haired, icy-eyed German with a lame right arm, Klaus Schultz. He had been Ina's German language teacher during the first year of high school, though she didn't have much to do with him anymore. It was strange to see him up here now, hovering above the perimeter of the hole, next to Suban, with Suban it seemed, waiting for whatever was going to happen, whatever was going to be found. As Ina sidled up to a couple of girlfriends from school, she noticed the 2 ends of an aluminum ladder jutting out of the entrance to the cave, and a bright green electrical cord flowing down the hole. Neither of these things had been there the night before, when she and Pero had laid down on the tarpaulin, or had they? They had noticed so little of their surroundings, eventually being alert only to their own 2 bodies. "It's a dead boy," Eva Fabiani whispered in Ina's ear. "A boy?" Ina turned her head sharply. "Our age, I mean, not a child. That's what they're saying," Eva explained. Then she pointed to the young foreign-looking woman standing in front of the container, the crying one. "She found him." "A skeleton?" Ina asked, confused. Didn't archaeologists dig for fossils and bones, for old things, for ancient things? No, stupid, Ava said. A boy like us, a real boy, a real body. That's what the big deal's all about. Ina turned around and scanned the faces of the young men in front of the clubhouse as if she were counting heads, checking to see who was missing. A real boy, a real body. Ina's gaze fell on Pero, who stood among the Antifa boys, quiet and motionless, somehow apart from the others. By this time, both of the uniformed policemen had lowered themselves down into the hole. They were down there for a while, with Subban and Schultz crouching at the top, calling down to them. It seemed they were having some difficulty figuring out how to pull the body up from the cavity. At first they tried to lower a stretcher from the ambulance down into the hole, but it proved too long and rigid to go down the narrow entryway, even though most of the foliage had been cleared away. It would be much harder to maneuver it up with a heavy body on it. With all the fumbling around, mistakes were probably being made from the standpoint of gathering evidence, not least the destruction of the branches through which the boy must have fallen. But such was the pressure to get the body out, almost as if there was still some hope of reviving it, that nobody seemed to care about anything else. Whispers circulated through the crowd that it was too tall, too heavy, impossible to handle in the dark, that it was utterly light and limpless, or alternatively stiff with rigor mortis, that it was maimed, cut into pieces, decapitated. Eventually, with the help of most of the men present, the two young men from the archaeological team, the two foresters who had cut the trees away, the ambulance driver, Subban and Schultz, a soft sling was fashioned from a tarpaulin and some ropes found among the archaeological team's equipment. Unseen by the onlookers, the body was placed into this makeshift sling and hauled laboriously upward. One of the laborers stood on the aluminum ladder to keep the sling from tilting or upending altogether, while also blocking the body from bouncing roughly against the steep vertical walls. When the sling finally emerged from the depths, Subban and Schultz pulled it up to the surface, opening the tarpaulin on the ground, and arranged the young man's body carefully upon the plastic folds. Ina, her hand rising involuntarily to her lips, realized that the tarp might well have been the same one that she and Pero had laid on the night before. It was dark green, almost black, and had been taken from the top of the pile. The dead boy lay in the same position that she and Pero had, cave opening behind his head, feet pointed in the direction of the Antifa clubhouse. Once the body was laid out, Subban stepped back and inspected it silently. He had a studious expression on his face, as if what had been discovered was not a corpse, but some ancient scroll or artifact that not only needed to be deciphered and dated, but also inspired a feeling of respect, of awe even. The cluster of onlookers, unable to see the dead boy's face clearly from their distance and angle of vision, and made even more curious by Subban's attitude of intense contemplation and by the sudden hush in the clearing and forest all around, pressed anxiously forward toward the opening of the cave and the prone figure lying in front of it. The special quality of the light, green from the surrounding foliage and golden from the morning sun, cast the whole scene in a magical Sylvan aura, as if the clearing were illuminated from above by an immense halo. There was a stillness and density to the scene that made it seem momentarily more like a painting in a museum than reality. What is it about the recent dead that excites everyone so much, Ina wondered, though she felt unaccountably excited herself. She had, paradoxically, the feeling one has when spotting not the presence of unexpected death, but rather that of unexpected life, a fox or a stag in the forest, that moment of rapture, the stoppage of time, the miracle when the animal's wild eyes meet yours, that fleeting connection with something alien, and then it's gone.